The Einstein family is the family of physicist Albert Einstein. Einstein's great-great-great-great-grandfather, Jacob Vey, was his oldest recorded relative, born in the late 17th century, and the family continues to this day. Albert Einstein's great-great-grandfather, Lob Moses Sontheimer, was also the grandfather of the tenor Heinrich Sontheim of Stuttgart. Albert's three children were from his relationship with his first wife, Mileva Merrick, his daughter Lieserl being born a year before they married. Albert Einstein's second wife was Elsa Einstein, whose mother Fanny Cook was the sister of Albert's mother, and whose father, Rudolf Einstein, was the son of Raphael Einstein, a brother of Albert's paternal grandfather. Albert and Elsa were thus first cousins through their mothers and second cousins through their fathers. Life and career. Early life and education. Albert Einstein was born in Ulm, in the Kingdom of Württemberg in the German Empire, on March 14, 1879 into a family of secular Ashkenazi Jews. His parents were Hermann Einstein, a salesman, an engineer, and Pauline Cook. In 1880, the family moved to Munich, where Einstein's father and his uncle Jacob founded Elektrotechnische Fabrik J. Einstein and CIE, a company that manufactured electrical equipment based on direct current. Albert attended a Catholic elementary school in Munich, from the age of 5, for 3 years. At the age of 8, he was transferred to the Luitpold Gymnasium, where he received advanced primary and secondary school education until he left the German Empire 7 years later. In 1894, Hermann and Jacob's company lost a bid to supply the city of Munich with electrical lighting because they lacked the capital to convert their equipment from the direct current standard to the more efficient alternating current standard. The loss forced the sale of the Munich factory. In search of business, the Einstein family moved to Italy, first to Milan and a few months later to Pavia. When the family moved to Pavia, Einstein, then 15, stayed in Munich to finish his studies at the Luitpold Gymnasium. His father intended for him to pursue electrical engineering, but Einstein clashed with the authorities and resented the school's regimen and teaching method. He later wrote that the spirit of learning and creative thought was lost in strict rote learning. At the end of December 1894, he traveled to Italy to join his family in Pavia, convincing the school to let him go by using a doctor's note. During his time in Italy he wrote a short essay with the title On the Investigation of the State of the Ether in a Magnetic Field. Einstein excelled at math and physics from a young age, reaching a mathematical level years ahead of his peers. The 12-year-old Einstein taught himself algebra and Euclidean geometry over a single summer. Einstein also independently discovered his own original proof of the Pythagorean theorem aged 12. A family tutor Max Talmud says that after he had given the 12-year-old Einstein a geometry textbook, after a short time had worked through the whole book. He thereupon devoted himself to higher mathematics. Soon the flight of his mathematical genius was so high I could not follow. His passion for geometry and algebra led the 12-year-old to become convinced that nature could be understood as a mathematical structure. Einstein started teaching himself calculus at 12, and as a 14-year-old he says he had mastered integral and differential calculus. At the age of 13, when he had become more seriously interested in philosophy, Einstein was introduced to Kant's critique of pure reason. Kant became his favorite philosopher, his tutor stating, at the time he was still a child, only 13 years old, yet Kant's works, incomprehensible to ordinary mortals, seemed to be clear to him. In 1895, at the age of 16, Einstein took the entrance examinations for the Swiss Federal Polytechnic School in Zurich. He failed to reach the required standard in the general part of the examination, but obtained exceptional grades in physics and mathematics. On the advice of the principal of the Polytechnic School, he attended the Argovian Cantonal School in Arras, Switzerland, in 1895 and 1896 to complete his secondary schooling. While lodging with the family of Jost Winteler, he fell in love with Winteler's daughter, Marie. Albert's sister Maja later married Winteler's son Paul. In January 1896, with his father's approval, Einstein renounced his citizenship in the German kingdom of Württemberg to avoid military service. In September 1896 he passed the Swiss Matura with mostly good grades, including a top grade of 6 in physics and mathematical subjects, on a scale of 1/6. At 17, he enrolled in the 4-year mathematics and physics teaching diploma program at the Federal Polytechnic School. Marie Winteler, who was a year older, moved to Olsberg, Switzerland, for a teaching post. Einstein's future wife, a 20-year-old Serbian named Miliva Maric, also enrolled at the Polytechnic School that year. She was the only woman among the 6 students in the mathematics and physics section of the teaching diploma course. Over the next few years, Einstein's and Maric's friendship developed into a romance, and they spent countless hours debating and reading books together on extracurricular physics in which they were both interested. Einstein wrote in his letters to Maric that he preferred studying alongside her. In 1900, Einstein passed the exams in maths and physics and was awarded a federal teaching diploma. There is eyewitness evidence and several letters over many years that indicate Maric might have collaborated with Einstein prior to his landmark 1905 papers, known as the Annus Mirabilis papers, and that they developed some of the concepts together during their studies, although some historians of physics who have studied the issue disagree that she made any substantive contributions. Marriages and children. Early correspondence between Einstein and Maric was discovered and published in 1987, which revealed that the couple had a daughter named Lieserl, born in early 1902 in Novi Sad, where Maric was staying with her parents. Maric returned to Switzerland without the child, whose real name and fate are unknown. The contents of Einstein's letter in September 1903 suggest that the girl was either given up for adoption or died of scarlet fever in infancy. Einstein and Maric married in January 1903. In May 1904, their son Hans Albert Einstein was born in Bern, Switzerland. Their son Eduard was born in Zurich in July 1910. The couple moved to Berlin in April 1914. But Maric returned to Zurich with their sons after learning that, despite their close relationship before, Einstein's chief romantic attraction was now his cousin Elsa Lowenthal. She was his first cousin maternally and second cousin paternally. Einstein and Maric divorced on February 14, 1919, having lived apart for 5 years. As part of the divorce settlement, Einstein agreed to give Maric any future Nobel Prize money. In letters revealed in 2015, Einstein wrote to his early love Marie Winteler about his marriage and his strong feelings for her. He wrote in 1910, while his wife was pregnant with their second child, "I think of you in heartfelt love every spare minute and am so unhappy as only a man can be." He spoke about a misguided love and a missed life regarding his love for Marie. Einstein married Lowenthal in 1919, after having had a relationship with her since 1912. They emigrated to the United States in 1933. Elsa was diagnosed with heart and kidney problems in 1935 and died in December 1936. In 1923, Einstein fell in love with a secretary named Betty Newman, the niece of a close friend, Hans Mussum. In a volume of letters released by Hebrew University of Jerusalem in 2006, Einstein described about 6 women, including Marguerite Lebach, Estella Katzenellenbogen, Toni Mendel, and Ethel Michanowski, with whom he spent time and from whom he received gifts while being married to Elsa. Later, after the death of his second wife Elsa, Einstein was briefly in a relationship with Margarita Konenkova. Konenkova was a Russian spy who was married to the noted Russian sculptor Sergei Konenkov. Einstein's son Eduard had a breakdown at about age 20 and was diagnosed with schizophrenia. His mother cared for him and he was also committed to asylums for several periods, finally, after her death, being committed permanently to Bergholzli, the psychiatric university hospital in Zurich. Patent Office. After graduating in 1900, Einstein spent almost 2 years searching for a teaching post. He acquired Swiss citizenship in February 1901, but was not conscripted for medical reasons. With the help of Marcel Grossmann's father, he secured a job in Bern at the Swiss Patent Office, as an assistant examiner level 3. Einstein evaluated patent applications for a variety of devices including a gravel sorter and an electromechanical typewriter. In 1903, his position at the Swiss Patent Office became permanent, although he was passed over for promotion until he fully mastered machine technology. Much of his work at the Patent Office related to questions about transmission of electric signals and electrical mechanical synchronization of time, two technical problems that show up conspicuously in the thought experiments that eventually led Einstein to his radical conclusions about the nature of light and the fundamental connection between space and time. With a few friends he had met in Bern, Einstein started a small discussion group in 1902, self-mockingly named the Olympia Academy, which met regularly to discuss science and philosophy. Sometimes they were joined by Maliva, who attentively listened but did not participate. Their readings included the works of Henri Poincaré, Ernst Mach, and David Hume, which influenced his scientific and philosophical outlook. First scientific papers. In 1900, Einstein's paper Folgerungen aus den Kapillaritätserscheinungen was published in the journal Annalen der Physik. On April 30, 1905, Einstein completed his dissertation, A New Determination of Molecular Dimensions, with Alfred Kleiner, serving as pro forma advisor. His thesis was accepted in July 1905, and Einstein was awarded a Ph.D. on January 15, 1906. Also in 1905, which has been called Einstein's Annus Mirabilis, he published 4 groundbreaking papers, on the photoelectric effect, Brownian motion, special relativity, and the equivalence of mass and energy, which were to bring him to the notice of the academic world, at the age of 26. Academic career. By 1908, he was recognized as a leading scientist and was appointed lecturer at the University of Bern. The following year, after he gave a lecture on electrodynamics and the relativity principle at the University of Zurich, Alfred Kleiner recommended him to the faculty for a newly created professorship in theoretical physics. Einstein was appointed associate professor in 1909. Einstein became a full professor at the German Charles Ferdinand University in Prague in April 1911, accepting Austrian citizenship in the Austro-Hungarian Empire to do so. During his Prague stay, he wrote 11 scientific works, 5 of them on radiation mathematics and on the quantum theory of solids. In July 1912, he returned to his alma mater in Zurich. From 1912 until 1914, he was a professor of theoretical physics at the ETH Zurich, where he taught analytical mechanics and thermodynamics. He also studied continuum mechanics, the molecular theory of heat, and the problem of gravitation, on which he worked with mathematician and friend Marcel Grossmann. When the Manifesto of the 93 was published in October 1914, a document signed by a host of prominent German intellectuals that justified Germany's militarism and position during the First World War, Einstein was one of the few German intellectuals to rebut its contents and sign the pacifistic manifesto to the Europeans. In the spring of 1913, Einstein was enticed to move to Berlin with an offer that included membership in the Prussian Academy of Sciences, and a linked University of Berlin professorship, enabling him to concentrate exclusively on research. On July 3, 1913, he became a member of the Prussian Academy of Sciences in Berlin. Max Planck and Walter Nernst visited him the next week in Zurich to persuade him to join the academy, additionally offering him the post of director at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute for Physics, which was soon to be established. Membership in the academy included paid salary and professorship without teaching duties at Humboldt University of Berlin. He was officially elected to the academy on July 24, and he moved to Berlin the following year. His decision to move to Berlin was also influenced by the prospect of living near his cousin Elsa, with whom he had started a romantic affair. Einstein assumed his position with the Academy and Berlin University, after moving into his Dahlem apartment on April 1, 1914. As World War I broke out that year, the plan for Kaiser Wilhelm Institute for Physics was delayed. The institute was established on October 1, 1917, with Einstein as its director. In 1916, Einstein was elected president of the German Physical Society. In 1911, Einstein used his 1907 equivalence principle to calculate the deflection of light from another star by the Sun's gravity. In 1913, Einstein improved upon those calculations by using Riemannian spacetime to represent the gravity field. By the fall of 1915, Einstein had successfully completed his general theory of relativity, which he used to calculate that deflection, and the perihelion precession of Mercury. In 1919, that deflection prediction was confirmed by Sir Arthur Eddington during the solar eclipse of May 29, 1919. Those observations were published in the international media, making Einstein world famous. On November 7, 1919, the leading British newspaper The Times printed a banner headline that read, "Revolution in Science, New Theory of the Universe, Newtonian Ideas Overthrown." In 1920, he became a foreign member of the Royal Netherlands Academy of Arts and Sciences. In 1922, he was awarded the 1921 Nobel Prize in Physics for his services to theoretical physics, and especially for his discovery of the law of the photoelectric effect. While the general theory of relativity was still considered somewhat controversial, the citation also does not treat even the cited photoelectric work as an explanation but merely as a discovery of the law, as the idea of photons was considered outlandish and did not receive universal acceptance until the 1924 derivation of the Planck spectrum by S. N. Bose. Einstein was elected a foreign member of the Royal Society in 1921. He also received the Copley Medal from the Royal Society in 1925. Einstein resigned from the Prussian Academy in March 1933. Einstein's scientific accomplishments while in Berlin included finishing the general theory of relativity, proving the gyromagnetic effect, contributing to the quantum theory of radiation, and Bose-Einstein statistics. 1921–1922, travels abroad. Einstein visited New York City for the first time on April 2, 1921, where he received an official welcome by Mayor John Francis Hylan, followed by 3 weeks of lectures and receptions. He went on to deliver several lectures at Columbia University and Princeton University, and in Washington, he accompanied representatives of the National Academy of Sciences on a visit to the White House. On his return to Europe, he was the guest of the British statesman and philosopher Viscount Haldane in London, where he met several renowned scientific, intellectual, and political figures, and delivered a lecture at King's College London. He also published an essay, My First Impression of the U.S.A., in July 1921, in which he tried briefly to describe some characteristics of Americans, much as had Alexis de Tocqueville, who published his own impressions in Democracy in America. For some of his observations, Einstein was clearly surprised. What strikes a visitor is the joyous, positive attitude to life. The American is friendly, self-confident, optimistic, and without envy. In 1922, his travels took him to Asia and later to Palestine, as part of a 6-month excursion and speaking tour, as he visited Singapore, Ceylon, and Japan, where he gave a series of lectures to thousands of Japanese. After his first public lecture, he met the Emperor and Empress at the Imperial Palace, where thousands came to watch. In a letter to his sons, he described his impression of the Japanese as being modest, intelligent, considerate, and having a true feel for art. In his own travel diaries from his 1922-23 visit to Asia, he expresses some views on the Chinese, Japanese and Indian people, which have been described as xenophobic and racist judgments when they were rediscovered in 2018. Because of Einstein's travels to the Far East, he was unable to personally accept the Nobel Prize for Physics at the Stockholm Award ceremony in December 1922. In his place, the banquet speech was made by a German diplomat, who praised Einstein not only as a scientist but also as an international peacemaker and activist. On his return voyage, he visited Palestine for 12 days, his only visit to that region. He was greeted as if he were a head of state, rather than a physicist, which included a cannon salute upon arriving at the home of the British High Commissioner, Sir Herbert Samuel. During one reception, the building was stormed by people who wanted to see and hear him. In Einstein's talk to the audience, he expressed happiness that the Jewish people were beginning to be recognized as a force in the world. Einstein visited Spain for 2 weeks in 1923, where he briefly met Santiago Ramón y Cajal and also received a diploma from King Alfonso XIII naming him a member of the Spanish Academy of Sciences. From 1922 to 1932, Einstein was a member of the International Committee on Intellectual Cooperation of the League of Nations in Geneva, a body created to promote international exchange between scientists, researchers, teachers, artists, and intellectuals. Originally slated to serve as the Swiss delegate, Secretary-General Erich Drummond was persuaded by Catholic activists Oskar Halecki and Giuseppe Motta to instead have him become the German delegate, thus allowing Gonzague de Reynold to take the Swiss spot, from which he promoted traditionalist Catholic values. Einstein's former physics professor Hendrik Lorentz and the Polish chemist Marie Curie were also members of the committee. 1925 – Visit to South America. In the months of March and April 1925, Einstein visited South America, where he spent about a month in Argentina, a week in Uruguay, and a week in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Einstein's visit was initiated by Jorge Duclaut and Mauricio Nierenstein with the support of several Argentine scholars, including Julio Rey Pastor, Jacob Loeb, and Leopoldo Lugones. The visit by Einstein and his wife was financed primarily by the Council of the University of Buenos Aires and the Asociación Hebraica Argentina with a smaller contribution from the Argentine Germanic Cultural Institution. 1930–1931, travel to the U.S. In December 1930, Einstein visited America for the second time, originally intended as a 2-month working visit as a research fellow at the California Institute of Technology. After the national attention he received during his first trip to the U.S., he and his arrangers aimed to protect his privacy. Although swamped with telegrams and invitations to receive awards or speak publicly, he declined them all. After arriving in New York City, Einstein was taken to various places and events, including Chinatown, a lunch with the editors of the New York Times, and a performance of Carmen at the Metropolitan Opera, where he was cheered by the audience on his arrival. During the days following, he was given the keys to the city by Mayor Jimmy Walker and met the president of Columbia University, who described Einstein as the ruling monarch of the mind. Harry Emerson Fosdick, pastor at New York's Riverside Church, gave Einstein a tour of the church and showed him a full-size statue that the church made of Einstein, standing at the entrance. Also during his stay in New York, he joined a crowd of 15,000 people at Madison Square Garden during a Hanukkah celebration. Einstein next traveled to California, where he met Caltech president and Nobel laureate Robert A. Millikan. His friendship with Millikan was awkward, as Millikan had a penchant for patriotic militarism, where Einstein was a pronounced pacifist. During an address to Caltech's students, Einstein noted that science was often inclined to do more harm than good. This aversion to war also led Einstein to befriend author Upton Sinclair and film star Charlie Chaplin, both noted for their pacifism. Carl Laemmle, head of Universal Studios, gave Einstein a tour of his studio and introduced him to Chaplin. They had an instant rapport, with Chaplin inviting Einstein and his wife, Elsa, to his home for dinner. Chaplin said Einstein's outward persona, calm and gentle, seemed to conceal a highly emotional temperament, from which came his extraordinary intellectual energy. Chaplin's film, City Lights, was to premiere a few days later in Hollywood, and Chaplin invited Einstein and Elsa to join him as his special guests. Walter Isaacson, Einstein's biographer, described this as one of the most memorable scenes in the new era of celebrity. Chaplin visited Einstein at his home on a later trip to Berlin and recalled his modest little flat and the piano at which he had begun writing his theory. Chaplin speculated that it was possibly used as kindling wood by the Nazis. 1933, emigration to the U.S. In February 1933, while on a visit to the United States, Einstein knew he could not return to Germany with the rise to power of the Nazis under Germany's new Chancellor, Adolf Hitler. While at American universities in early 1933, he undertook his third two-month visiting professorship at the California Institute of Technology in Pasadena. In February and March 1933, the Gestapo repeatedly raided his family's apartment in Berlin. He and his wife Elsa returned to Europe in March, and during the trip, they learned that the German Reichstag had passed the Enabling Act on March 23, transforming Hitler's government into a de facto legal dictatorship, and that they would not be able to proceed to Berlin. Later on, they heard that their cottage had been raided by the Nazis and Einstein's personal sailboat confiscated. Upon landing in Antwerp, Belgium on March 28, Einstein immediately went to the German consulate and surrendered his passport, formally renouncing his German citizenship. The Nazis later sold his boat and converted his cottage into a Hitler youth camp. Refugee status. Resident scholar at the Institute for Advanced Study. World War II and the Manhattan Project. U.S. citizenship. Personal views. Political views. Relationship with Zionism. Religious and philosophical views. Love of music. Death. On April 17, 1955, Einstein experienced internal bleeding caused by the rupture of an abdominal aortic aneurysm, which had previously been reinforced surgically by Rudolf Nissen in 1948. He took the draft of a speech he was preparing for a television appearance commemorating the State of Israel's 7th anniversary with him to the hospital, but he did not live to complete it. Einstein refused surgery, saying, "I want to go when I want. It is tasteless to prolong life artificially. I have done my share, it is time to go. I will do it elegantly." He died in the University Medical Center of Princeton at Plainsboro early the next morning at the age of 76, having continued to work until near the end. During the autopsy, the pathologist Thomas Stoltz Harvey removed Einstein's brain for preservation without the permission of his family, in the hope that the neuroscience of the future would be able to discover what made Einstein so intelligent. Einstein's remains were cremated in Trenton, New Jersey, and his ashes were scattered at an undisclosed location. In a memorial lecture delivered on December 13, 1965 at UNESCO headquarters, nuclear physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer summarized his impression of Einstein as a person: "He was almost wholly without sophistication and wholly without worldliness. There was always with him a wonderful purity at once childlike and profoundly stubborn." Einstein bequeathed his personal archives, library, and intellectual assets to the Hebrew University of Jerusalem in Israel. Scientific career. Throughout his life, Einstein published hundreds of books and articles. He published more than 300 scientific papers and 150 non-scientific ones. On December 5, 2014, universities and archives announced the release of Einstein's papers, comprising more than 30,000 unique documents. Einstein's intellectual achievements and originality have made the word Einstein synonymous with genius. In addition to the work he did by himself, he also collaborated with other scientists on additional projects including the Bose-Einstein statistics, the Einstein refrigerator and others. 1905 Annus Mirabilis/I Papers. None. Statistical Mechanics. Thermodynamic Fluctuations and Statistical Physics. Theory of Critical Opalescence. Special Relativity. Einstein's Zur Elektrodynamik bewegter Körper was received on June 30, 1905 and published September 26 of that same year. It reconciled conflicts between Maxwell's equations and the laws of Newtonian mechanics by introducing changes to the laws of mechanics. Observationally, the effects of these changes are most apparent at high speeds. The theory developed in this paper later became known as Einstein's special theory of relativity. There is evidence from Einstein's writings that he collaborated with his first wife, Mileva Merrick, on this work. The decision to publish only under his name seems to have been mutual, but the exact reason is unknown. This paper predicted that, when measured in the frame of a relatively moving observer, a clock carried by a moving body would appear to slow down, and the body itself would contract in its direction of motion. This paper also argued that the idea of a luminiferous ether, one of the leading theoretical entities in physics at the time, was superfluous. In his paper on mass-energy equivalence, Einstein produced E equals mc2 as a consequence of his special relativity equations. Einstein's 1905 work on relativity remained controversial for many years, but was accepted by leading physicists, starting with Max Planck. Einstein originally framed special relativity in terms of kinematics. In 1908, Hermann Minkowski reinterpreted special relativity in geometric terms as a theory of spacetime. Einstein adopted Minkowski's formalism in his 1915 general theory of relativity. General relativity. General relativity and the equivalence principle. Gravitational waves. Whole argument and N-dwarf theory. Physical cosmology. Energy-momentum pseudotensor. Wormholes. Einstein-Cartan theory. Equations of motion. Old quantum theory. Photons and energy quanta. Quantized atomic vibrations. Adiabatic principle and action angle variables. Bose-Einstein statistics. Wave-particle duality. Zero-point energy. Stimulated emission. Matter waves. Quantum mechanics. Einstein's objections to quantum mechanics. Bohr versus Einstein. Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen paradox. Unified field theory. Following his research on general relativity, Einstein attempted to generalize his theory of gravitation to include electromagnetism as aspects of a single entity. In 1950, he described his unified field theory in a Scientific American article titled On the Generalized Theory of Gravitation. Although he was lauded for this work, his efforts were ultimately unsuccessful. Notably, Einstein's unification project did not accommodate the strong and weak nuclear forces, neither of which was well understood until many years after his death. Although mainstream physics long ignored Einstein's approaches to unification, Einstein's work has motivated modern quests for a theory of everything, in particular string theory, where geometrical fields emerge in a unified quantum mechanical setting. Other investigations. Einstein conducted other investigations that were unsuccessful and abandoned. These pertain to force, superconductivity, and other research. Collaboration with other scientists. In addition to longtime collaborators Leopold Infeld, Nathan Rosen, Peter Bergman, and others, Einstein also had some one-shot collaborations with various scientists. Einstein-de Haas experiment. Schrödinger gas model. Einstein refrigerator. Non-scientific legacy. While traveling, Einstein wrote daily to his wife Elsa and adopted stepdaughters Margot and Ilse. The letters were included in the papers bequeathed to the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Margot Einstein permitted the personal letters to be made available to the public, but requested that it not be done until 20 years after her death. Barbara Wolfe, of the Hebrew University's Albert Einstein Archives, told the BBC that there are about 3,500 pages of private correspondence written between 1912 and 1955. Einstein's right of publicity was litigated in 2015 in a federal district court in California. Although the court initially held that the right had expired, that ruling was immediately appealed, and the decision was later vacated in its entirety. The underlying claims between the parties in that lawsuit were ultimately settled. The right is enforceable, and the Hebrew University of Jerusalem is the exclusive representative of that right. Corbis, successor to the Roger Richman Agency, licenses the use of his name and associated imagery, as agent for the university. Mount Einstein in New Zealand's Papero Range was named after him in 1970 by the Department of Scientific and Industrial Research. In popular culture, Einstein became one of the most famous scientific celebrities, beginning with the confirmation of his theory of general relativity in 1919. Despite the general public having little understanding of his work, he was widely recognized and received adulation and publicity. In the period before World War II, The New Yorker published a vignette in their The Talk of the Town feature saying that Einstein was so well known in America that he would be stopped on the street by people wanting him to explain that theory. He finally figured out a way to handle the incessant inquiries. He told his inquirers, "Pardon me, sorry. Always I am mistaken for Professor Einstein." Einstein has been the subject of or inspiration for many novels, films, plays, and works of music. He is a favorite model for depictions of absent-minded professors. His expressive face and distinctive hairstyle have been widely copied and exaggerated. Time magazine's Frederick Golden wrote that Einstein was a cartoonist's dream come true. Many popular quotations are often misattributed to him. Awards and honors. Einstein received numerous awards and honors, and in 1922, he was awarded the 1921 Nobel Prize in Physics for his services to theoretical physics, and especially for his discovery of the law of the photoelectric effect. None of the nominations in 1921 met the criteria set by Alfred Nobel, so the 1921 prize was carried forward and awarded to Einstein in 1922. Publications. Scientific. Others. See also. Notes.